This is going to be a circuit analysis of the classic 1960s Dallas Arbiter Fuzz Face circuit. I'm going to show you how to do some mods, such as I've done on these pedals, and I will be selling these pedals if anyone wants to buy them, or if you're a DIY guy, you can build your own. So let's go through it. This is the classic germanium fuzz face, or no, this is the NPN version. This is the classic fuzz face circuit from Dallas Arbiter from the 1960s. And let's go through what this does and what I've done here on these pedals. Here's the input. This is your guitar. It goes into this capacitor, and this shapes the tone. Here's the Q1 and Q2 transistors. Having different transistors, these can kind of change the sound just a little bit. It's mostly the breakup characteristics that these are going to affect. If we go down here, this is the fuzz. This is a potentiometer for the fuzz right here. You use a 20 UF electrolytic capacitor. Let's go on up here. These two things right here, these bias the transistors. This is what gives you the vintage tone if these are biased right. I find the modern Dunlop pedals to be biased a little bit high, and they sound good, but they don't sound the same as the vintage. The vintage, they're biased at about 4.5 typically, and these modern ones are biased at more of 5 or 6 volts for the Q2 transistor, that is. The Q1, the vintage, was biased at about 0.7 volts, and the modern ones from Dunlop are probably more like 2.30 volts. This video is sponsored by me. If you'd like to see what I'm currently building, go to the link in the description. Here are some pedals I'm releasing tonight. I'm always releasing new stuff. Here's pedals I've done in the past that you've missed out on and I will never build again, and you should feel bad about that. Now back to the video. Let's go on here. I've noticed that some schematics say you use a 4.70 ohm resistor here, and some say a 3.30 ohm resistor. So somewhere in that range, and all this does really is it kind of controls the loudness. So if you want it louder, then you'll probably go with the lower number. From what I remember, I could have that reversed, but as I remember, the lower number, 330, will give you a little bit louder. 470 will give you not quite as loud. Here's the output capacitor. This is the film capacitor, and this also can shape the tone a little bit. I don't think quite as much as the first one from my experience. And then this here's a potentiometer. This is your volume, which would be right here. And you're probably wondering, what's this middle knob in the pedal? Well, this is your bias. And this is really awesome to have because it makes it more versatile. You can get just about any fuzz sound with this bias knob here. That would be here. You can either do it with a Q2 or Q1 transistor. I'm the first ever to do this. As far as I know, I've added a voltage meter so you can see the voltage of your pedal, because the problem with germanium transistors is they change bias with temperature. So one day when you first make it, it sounds great, but then the next day it's like 10 degrees colder or hotter, and it's not going to sound the same. So with this, you can have it sound the same every time. When you turn it on, you just quickly adjust the bias. It only takes a second, and then you click your pedal on, you're ready to go, and it's going to sound the way you want. And it's versatile because traditionally you get the 4.5 bias for like the 1960s sound, but say you want more of a modern sound, then you'll probably want it biased at like 6 volts. And then you can also do this cool thing where you can bias it like maybe to 1 or 2 volts and get a cool velvety sound, kind of like a Jack White kind of a thing, or like a Mario Brothers Nintendo kind of thing. You can get some cool sounds with that. Let's go through the mods I have done to this circuit, so you'll know why you want to buy one of these or build one of these. You'll notice here it's different. Before there was a potentiometer there, and what I've done is I've taken that off. This is now fixed. It's turned all the way up. So this fuzz is turned all the way up now. You might ask, why would you want the fuzz turned all the way up? If you're asking that question, it's probably because you haven't used a fuzz pedal yet, or you haven't figured out how they work. If you look at pictures of people using these, the fuzz is always dimed. Like Jimi Hendrix, he always played with the fuzz all the way up. And then he rolled back the volume on his guitar, and he controlled the fuzz with that. And he was actually controlling the pre-gain. Controlling the pre-gain to the circuit if you roll it back, it cleans it up so much nicer than rolling back the fuzz. This actually, when you roll it back, it's really unusable and it sounds muddy, and it just sounds so much better when you roll back the volume on your guitar. So what I've done is this is the input. So because this is fixed, now we got the input. I put a potentiometer here in the input, and this is a 250K pot. Let me write that down. 250K. So 250K, that is the same impedance of the potentiometer in your Strat, in any vintage Stratocaster. And so rolling this back is just like rolling the volume back on your guitar. So you get that same effect, and it's so much more usable. The next part is this. I don't put this on all of my pedals. I didn't put it on this one that I modded because there's not really quite room. I did put it on this because this is kind of like an everything pedal. So what this does is this changes the input capacitance, and this is going to shape the tone of your pedal. You can get it to sound like any fuzz pedal out there just about, because that's the main thing they've done. Different people who've made Fuzz Face clones, they've usually played with this. So what I like to do is I put a little mark here, and that is the stock capacitance, which is what is it supposed to be, 2.2 UF. So if you go to here, that's 2.2 UF. But if you want to have it more like a treble booster, you can go up to 0.005 UF. And if you want it more like fuzz or like super crazy dark, you can go up to like 6 UF. The biggest mod I do on my pedals when I can is I like to use polypropylene capacitors. And what, may you ask, is that? This is a polypropylene capacitor. And some people use polyester capacitors, which they're like better than electrolytic capacitors. This is an electrolytic capacitor. These are cheap, they're small, but they don't sound good as these. These tend to be bigger. Here's an example of the input capacitor. The input capacitor is supposed to be 2.2 UF. So this is what you're supposed to put in it, a 2.2 UF capacitor. And this is actually a bigger one that you need. This is like 50 volts. You can go down to 25 volts for the Fuzz Face, so probably even smaller than this. Now here is the capacitor I like to use. This is polypropylene. It's extremely expensive, significantly more than this. So it's bigger. It's going to take up more real estate inside your pedal board, or inside your pedal box anyway. But this is the best sound. And I mean, it's a small sound, but you know, if you want the best quality pedal, like the reason why you'd go to a builder like me is because I can make better quality than you can get from a big mass producer of them. You know, they're going for the cheaper. I'm going for more quality stuff that you can't buy normally. So this would be the input capacitor right here, but for the fuzz down here, this is a huge capacitor. Normally, this is the capacitor, 22 UF. This is what would be normally used in the Fuzz Face, but this is what I'm using here. This thing's huge, and it's really expensive and really hard to find these. But yeah, that's gonna give you the best quality sound that you can get. Another thing that some builders like to do is some people like carbon comp resistors. Here is an example of carbon comp resistors right here. So these are vintage. They don't make them anymore. And they kind of, some people say they're not as good as the new ones. They produce distortions, but some people like that. It gives you a classic sound. The more modern ones, they are more clear. It's a matter of preference. Like, what do you want? Do you want the modern ones, or do you, and then here's a in between right here. This is kind of in between. This is carbon too. These put a little bit less distortions. I don't have any of the modern ones offhand, but they're typically blue. Let's talk about the next mod I'm doing to this circuit is the bias mod. This is a very important mod. Instead of just having these resistors here, this is going to give you some bias that, like, the thing is, you want to have the perfect bias for these two transistors right here. And a circuit like this will give you that. So what I've done is I've removed those 2 resistors there, and instead I've got, for the Q1, I've got a 200K resistor and a 100K pot, potentiometer that is. And let me show you how I'd wire that. First, you've got the resistor, right? It's coming off of this transistor, and it will go into this potentiometer right here onto one leg, and then the other leg just goes here, completes the circuit. So yeah, you're just using 2 legs, not the third one. This one you don't ground. You would ground this over here and this over here, but not the bias pots. Now, once you get this, you want to find the bias voltage. So you're going to get your multimeter, and you're going to put it to volts, and you're going to put 1 probe to ground anywhere on the chassis, and then you're going to put another probe to the collector for your Q1. And after you do that, you're going to turn this potentiometer until you get exactly 0.7 volts. And then this is the exact same thing, only it uses a 10K potentiometer and a 2K resistor. So you're going to do the same thing. You're going to put you got your voltage meter, one of the leads on ground, the other one goes to the collector right here. And you're going to then adjust the bias pot, and you're going to adjust it till it gets to 4.5 volts. After you do that, you're going to go back and rebias this one because it's going to change this. And you're going to go back and forth until you get 0.7 volts and 4.5 volts. And that's the perfect voltage that's stock that you're supposed to have. And then I'd recommend, after you get that, I'd play with this with the Q2 and maybe put it up to 5 or even 6 volts because it sounds good at those voltages too. It's just a matter of preference, which is why it's great to just put the bias knob on here so you can, on the fly, you can change the bias. This pedal, you can see the voltage right here. So I have it to where you switch over here, you can bias the Q2. Switch over here, you can bias the Q1 transistor. I have this so you can go from silicone, which is, in this one I have the BC108Cs, which is in the Jimi Hendrix Dunlop pedal. Only I have the Cs, which is the more vintage. I guess that's the one that they used to use. They just have BC108s. Anyways, and then I go down to the germanium, and these are hard to get NPN germanium transistors because you have to use the NPN so that you can go between the BC108s and the germaniums. So these germaniums, what are they? I can't remember what these ones are, but I put different ones in each pedal depending on what I've got and what's the best. I have a jig over here that I actually put my circuits in beforehand. The transistors go here and here. So with this, I'll put the transistors in and I'll test out the circuit, make sure the transistors sound good, or the transistors might be junk and I'll throw them away. And I mix and match until I get it sounding good. So I'm not just building a pedal and saying like, I hope this sounds good. I've already put it in here and figured out about what the bias is going to be and matched them so they actually sound good. So what else to talk about here? Oh yeah, you can put a 1.5 meg resistor here. And what that'll do is that'll help if you're having problems with pop. Sometimes older pedals, the circuit's so simple. So sometimes if you haven't played it for a while and then you go to turn it on, it'll make a popping noise. So this resistor will help reduce that because sometimes the circuit can get like a charge in it. It's not on the original circuit, but it doesn't affect the tone. And none of these other mods affect the tone of it. This mod over here just makes it so basically the fuzz is turned all the way up, and it's like rolling back the volume when you turn it down over here instead. This does change the tone, but you have the little mark. I like to put the little mark here. So you got the mark where the stock setting is. So you got a baseline to start from. But other than that, this is a stock Fuzz Face, it'll sound like the one that Jimi Hendrix played. Everything in the circuit is the same, except for the transistors are a different transistor, not the same exact one. He used the NKT 275s, which are impossible to find. They haven't made them since the 1960s. The ones I have sound pretty close, more close than the silicone. Silicone transistors, they sound good, but I prefer the germanium. They sound better. It's like they have a higher fidelity. So anyways, that's it for this video. Stick around, there will be more coming. I'll see you in the next video.